Common sense and good taste. In the 18th century, during the period called the Enlightenment, many educated people were convinced that common sense, or reason, would lead the way to a better world for everybody. Respect, tolerance, and democracy were new keywords. Parliamentarism became the political system in England that was going to solve the country's social and economic problems. New inventions like the steam engine and other industrial machines made people optimistic about the future. In literature at this time, there was little room for imagination and sentiments. On the contrary, literature became the medium for discussing and analyzing political problems, as well as enlightening people and setting examples. Reforming and modernizing poetry and prose was another goal. Wit, common sense, and good taste were important ingredients. The 18th century in England also marks the breakthrough of the press. More and more people could read and showed interest in reading about their own living conditions. They wanted entertainment and knowledge in witty and straightforward journalistic prose. Words of wisdom from Dr. Johnson. Samuel Johnson, 1709 to 1784, often referred to as Dr. Johnson, was a literary titan of the 18th century. Besides being an essayist, he was also a poet, editor, critic, and a famous talker. His wittily formulated aphorisms on various subjects are famous. He also wrote a dictionary of the English language, his most famous work. Here are some aphorisms from his works. On ability. Few things are impossible to diligence and skill, from Rasselas. On admiration. It is always necessary to be loved, but not always necessary to be reverenced, from Rambler. On curiosity. Curiosity is one of the permanent and certain characteristics of a vigorous intellect. On boredom. Time, with all its celerity, moves slowly to him whose whole employment is to watch its flight, from Idler. On happiness. Human happiness has always its abatements. The brightest sunshine of success is not without a cloud. On learning. It is told that the act of education, Milton, performed wonders. Those who tell or receive these stories should consider that nobody can be taught faster than he can learn. The speed of the horseman must be limited by the power of his horse. Every man that has ever undertaken to instruct others can tell what slow advances he has been able to make, and how much patience it requires to recall vagrant inattention, to stimulate sluggish indifference, and to rectify absurd misapprehension. From Lives of the Poets. On loss. I thought it cannot be reasonable not to gain happiness for fear of losing it. Yet it must be confessed that, in proportion to the pleasure of possession, will be for some time our sorrow for the loss. From Rambler. On madness. Disorders of intellect happen much more often than superficial observers will easily believe. Perhaps if we speak with rigorous exactness, no human mind is in its right state. From Rasselas. On pleasure. Pleasure is only received when believed that we give in return. From Rambler. Questions. What is an aphorism? What do the aphorisms above actually mean? It is generally said that many of Dr. Johnson's aphorisms are both timeless and humorous. Do you agree or not? Why? What positive impact can newspapers have on the development of society? What negative influences can newspapers have on their readers? Jane Austen, a pioneer. The late 18th century was in many respects a period when people started to learn the meaning of democracy. Still, it would take a long time before women were included in the process of liberation. Like a dog walking on his hind legs. One striking example of inequality between the sexes can be found in the conditions for women writers. One of the relatively few whose works we'll still read today is Jane Austen, 1775 to 1817. She finished her first novel, First Impressions, in 1797. A few decades earlier, Dr. Samuel Johnson, see page 50, had said a woman's preaching is like a dog walking on his hind legs. It is not done well, but you are surprised to find it done at all. This quotation particularly refers to a woman speaking in front of an audience, but it also mirrors the general idea of the time that women had better know their place. In this atmosphere of cultural narrow-mindedness, Jane Austen nourished her dreams of becoming an author. Unexpected setback. Little is known of the early version of First Impressions. No copy exists. We know her father offered it to a publisher in the hope that it would be printed. However, the publisher refused without even having seen the manuscript. Radical convictions and a great portion of courage were needed to print a work by a woman, and this he apparently lacked. Furthermore, the manuscript had been written by a very young woman, which did not make it any easier. Jane Austen was only 21 at the time. Was she discouraged by her first rejection? Most probably, although she cannot have been surprised. Jane Austen continued to write, however. In 1811, 14 years after finishing First Impressions, she again picked up the manuscript and began revising it into the novel we know today as Pride and Prejudice. This occurred shortly after her first publishing success, that of Sense and Sensibility, in the same year. Pride and Prejudice proved to be more successful than First Impressions. It was finally published in 1813. Had Jane Austen wanted moral victory? In one respect she definitely had, but her name never appeared on the published books during her lifetime. The title page of Pride and Prejudice read only, by the author of Sense and Sensibility. The victory was not official, yet we may hope personal. It also opened the doors for many women writers in the future.